this so that we have access. You guys can watch the follow-up because we're going to cover a lot of information from Fast and Furious. We're still waiting here. Just Pete's with us now. Kyle, Carrie, Jason, Derek is with us. Daryl, Daniel, RJ, Mark, and then we got a couple panelists: Ian, Joe, and Teresa.
I think Luis is the only one who's had success with it.
Teresa has?
No, Luis.
Oh, Luis. Yeah, Luis isn't even on here with us, surprisingly enough. Oh, there's Mark. I know Mark had a special presentation that he wanted to do today. So, Mark, let me make you promote you to a panelist. And let me see if I can actually give you access to be a co-host. That's what I want to do. Mark.
Hey, Ryan, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hey, sorry to keep everybody waiting.
So down on the bottom of the screen, Mark, you should see a share button. I'll just stop sharing on my end, and if you want to bring your camera up, then we can see what you're chatting about on your end.
Cool. Let me bring up my video here.
There you are.
Hey, I don't want to trump Ryan's meeting, so I'm just going to be super fast. But Dwayne is here, and we wanted to recognize this recent deal that was done by Dave Hartnett and Skylar and everyone else. So let's see. I just want to see if you could see my screen here. There. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. It just shows. How about, can you still see my video?
Yep.
All right. I guess I don't need to share my screen. I just wanted you to be able to see me. We've got Dwayne here, and he wants to present us. Really, this is a presentation for David Hartnett, but because David Hartnett's not here.
So I was wondering how many we're visiting with. So
David actually is on with us, Mark.
Mark. Joe.
Oh, look, David's here.
Oh, David's
why don't you stop? Hey, Mark, why don't you stop sharing your screen so it makes it bigger? You're like a small window. Just stop sharing your screen. There we go. There we
How
go.
about that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So, David, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right. Well, this wasn't how I envisioned meeting you.
We've talked enough, that's for sure.
So, this is going to be hard for me to send your way. Maybe we can find a smaller version.
Yeah.
This check for all the hard work you and I did on EAI.
Thank you.
I met with Crisco yesterday or the day before.
Pardon me?
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, I hope there's more of these to come in the near future. For every.
Let me mute everybody. Hold on.
For every deal that we do together, I am pulling in an origination fee that is going to the franchisees or the salespeople in general. So I'm really happy. I hope I get to present a whole bunch more of these in the near future.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, we too hope this is the first of many for David and for everybody else who closes deals with TBS.
Yeah. And so while I'm here, why don't we put the, I can make let me make a quick presentation. I can talk about what is in our wheelhouse with TBS capital funding. I think David's the only one that I've actually had a chance to visit with. So here.
Sure. I'll just move the camera down so everybody can still see it.
Okay. So the first thing I'll mention is that I'm an AR. We do AR financing and purchase order financing. One of the things that seems to grabs everybody's attention is that we will also do construction funding. So we will finance AR accounts receivable for the construction industry. Typically, when a finance company hears that, they'll run because they don't understand the relationship between GCs and their subs or the owner and the GCs. And they certainly aren't going to be comfortable with paid when paid, progress billing, milestone billing. And so we're super comfortable with all of that. We do a lot of construction financing. And so if you guys have not been working with much in that space, think of TBS in the future, and we would be happy to work with you on it. Okay. That is not the only industry that we work in. We're also heavily in manufacturing, supply chain finance, seller, buyer, wholesale relationships. We do staffing, oil and gas. Whether it be, we do government, bonded or not bonded in the construction industry. So anything in that nature, I know talking to the guys here in the office, they're not familiar with a lot of purchase order financing. So hopefully that's something I can work with you guys on in the future. Does anybody have any questions?
What is your
Not all at once.
It's a quiet group. RJ,
I don't know. Yeah. What is the maximum you'll go up to?
Good question. So our floor is $20,000 a month. Our ceiling is really unlimited. 20 million would probably be where I would start looking at someone to participate with me that I would need help, or not. I would start getting uncomfortable at $20 million a month. I would just find another finance company that would participate with me to share the risk.
Great, thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. We know today's call is all about LinkedIn and using Ryan's expertise, but we wanted to take advantage since Dwayne's here in the building today to highlight this deal done by David Hartnett and hope that it's the first of many deals that we do with TBS, finding the right capital for our borrowers out there. So thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you, David, and look forward to working with you more in the future.
All right, Dwayne, thank you.
All right, buddy.
So Ryan, I'll turn off my camera now and hand it back to you for the rest of the meeting.
You got it. Okay, just one more time. Congratulations, Dave. That's exciting. It actually plays really well into the presentation today because we're going to talk a lot about identifying who your target demographic is and figuring out the best way to bring that person from a target demo into your world and then have conversations with them. So good to be with you. RJ, I think you said that Teresa was, oh no, it was Luis was the one that had some success running some Facebook, or I'm sorry, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're using LinkedIn. Today is LinkedIn. I've had a lot of conversations today. So yeah, great. Andrew, I'm just gonna bump you up here into a panelist so that you can get access, make sure we can hear everyone. I do want this to have the feel of being just conversational because we're gonna talk about a lot of things, and because I'm not necessarily new to what you guys do, but I don't have an in-depth understanding per se of everything that you do. I'll teach you strategies that work, but I'd love to have your feedback as we go through this. And many of you I had the chance to meet at your national convention or your franchise meeting in Salt Lake. I think it was that in June, July? Maybe it was before that, March, April, I can't remember exactly when it was. But it was great meeting you and excited to work with you guys here. Mark and I have been formulating and figuring out how can we best build a platform and an environment to help you succeed. So we've got lots of information to cover today. Let me just give you a quick little backstory on who I am. First and foremost, I actually have a degree in engineering and transitioned into marketing, which is kind of crazy. I've been married for 16 years. These are my 3 beautiful children. My daughter turns 12 tomorrow, so I'm starting to get into the tween years, which is super exciting. I founded a company, president of a company that's been around for about 6 years called Strategic Social Partners, which is the company that I work with. I have another business that does over $1 million a year in CPG business, consumer packaged goods. Blast. I've been selling on a professional level for a long time. So hopefully the tactics that you'll hear from me will correlate and be able to really grow and expand your experience in social selling, but more importantly, create more success for you. I am, and kind of one little funny note about me is I am obsessed with consumer behavior and the impact that social media has on buyers. I love it. I'm super, super passionate about it. And in the course of the next 8 weeks, as we dialogue through these presentations and as we dialogue and leverage LinkedIn specifically to generate more sales for you and for your organization, we will have a lot of conversations about customer journey, buying cycle, where they are, what they can do, what the next step is in the customer journey. We'll do that throughout the process. So excited to spend that with you and share that with you. All right, let me just give you kind of the baseline. Can everybody hear me okay? Say yes if you can, just making sure I want to check in.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let me
Yes.
give you the outline. And this is what I want to cover over the course of the next 8 weeks. Sometimes it's going to feel like it goes extremely fast. Sometimes it's going to be like, oh man, how many weeks have we gone through? It feels like it's taken forever. But there will be some tactical things, and then there will be some strategy things that we need to talk about throughout this process. So number one today, how do you set up your profile? I should have added a little bit more to that because I want to talk more about how do you set up your profile, the basics, but then also how do you tell your story in a way on your profile that makes authentic connections and gives people a reason to connect with you and open up a dialogue with you, research about who you are, what you're doing, and what you're doing with Lendio. All right? Week 2, we're going to talk about the search features. What can you do on LinkedIn if you have your standard account? What can you do from a premium account? What can you do if you have Sales Navigator? And we're going to dive back and forth on week 2 into the actual search features so we can show you how to grow and expand your influence and begin generating some leads right away. Now, keeping in mind, obviously, this is a natural progression, right? Week 1 is the basics. Week 2 is going to build on week 1, and so on and so forth throughout this process to where you guys are going to be gurus and junkies, generating hundreds, if not thousands of dollars through your connections on LinkedIn. I hope you're happy about that, excited about that. Week 5, we're going to do a deep dive into Sales Navigator. How do you leverage Sales Navigator to search for the exact person you want to get in front of, add them into a list of people that you can follow up with, stay engaged with, stay tuned in. And then the week 6 then is how do we convert those people inside of your list into more leads more effectively? And then finally, week number 7 is your list. How do you leverage your list by using third-party software programs to enhance your list and give you even more depth and understanding about your connections? So when you strike up dialogue, it's not the weather conversation. And if you remember, we talked a little bit about this in the presentation when I was down there doing it for you. We'll dive into that in week 7. And then finally, week 8, listen, my goal for you is over the course of the next 8 weeks, if you'll do what I say, I'm not trying to be commanding in that, but literally, if you'll use these tactics that we will leverage over the course of the next 8 weeks, my goal for you is that by week 8, you'll have generated leads and also some sales from the strategies that we're executing on over the course of these next 8 weeks. Are you guys okay with that?
Sounds good.
All right. I know, but it's going to take work.
Very much okay with new deals. Thanks, Ryan.
Good. But the reality is, and I want you to think about this, the reality is simply this. Social selling is about leveraging your social networks to find the right prospects, build trusted relationships, and ultimately achieve your sales goals. But it's not something that just comes. So as we go through these processes, I'm going to actually outline some specific actions to take after every presentation. And I want accountability metrics in place, meaning I want you to return a report to me and say, yes, I did this, or no, I did not do that. Because we will be able to gauge the success of you building your LinkedIn profile and creating success with LinkedIn solely based upon the efforts that you put into it. Some of it might feel relatively monotonous, but recognize that consistency is the key. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a recommendation right now. Set aside 15 to 20 minutes per day to look at, engage with, send messages to, make connections on LinkedIn. 15 to 20 minutes per day. You'll notice if you'll do that consistently that as we move forward through this process, you'll want to spend more time because the time you'll be spending will be productive for you. Okay? All right, let's talk about social selling. Again, the what? Social selling builds upon your current sales process. It's not a replacement of, meaning you still have to do the work. Okay? It's a way of leveraging technology to get in front of more people more quickly. Let me ask this, and Mark, maybe you can chime in. What is your goal as a franchise owner of a Lendio franchise? What is your goal as far as how many people you want to try to get in front of on a week-to-week basis?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody else. You know, everybody's goals are a little bit unique. We've talked about attending 5 meetings a week, or a meeting a day is what Brock talked about in June at the conference, with the objective of meeting 2 potential partners and 2 potential borrowers in every interaction, right? So we've kind of pegged 10 potential borrowers, 10 potential partners every week. Some people are doing more than that. Some are not quite there yet, but that's kind of a rough finger in the wind.
Okay.
That we've been talking about for a few months.
Okay. So the goal currently is 5 per week. Is that right, Mark? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, 10 per week? 10 per week?
Yes.
I'm just writing this down, jotting this down from an accountability perspective. How many of you currently are using LinkedIn to generate some of those points of contact, set up those meetings today? Luis, what's up, my man? Good to have you here. You raised his hand. I'm sure you are. Luis, how many, and you're welcome to unmute yourself here, how many contacts are you creating through LinkedIn, or how many points of contact are you shooting for on LinkedIn each week?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Each week I shoot for anywhere between 5 to 750 invites.
500 to 750?
Yeah, a week.
Great. And so you're leveraging some third-party technology to send out some of those invitations on the front end, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Andy, you mentioned that you are as well. Tell me what you have going on.
Yeah, I'm in the about same category as Louise. I try to do 100 a day, 500 a week, and I'm using that same technology.
Okay. And how long does that take you to send a message out to 500 to 750 people a day, or a week, I guess?
Well, the technology does it. So
To set it up, it takes it takes me about 10-15 minutes to set it up for the whole week.
Out of those, so I guess the question in association with this presentation, how many of you would like the ability to leverage technology to get in front of 500 to 750 people on a week-to-week basis? I think there's some hands that go up, right? Yeah. And tell me, Luis and Andy, both, since you're both using similar technology, what percentage of those normally translate into a conversation?
It varies, but I would say anywhere from 10 to 15% of those translate into a conversation or a scheduled phone call.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, anywhere out of those 500, I average maybe, I would say it could be anywhere from 3 to 7
calls per week, conversations per week.
Yeah, conversations per week.
Okay, fantastic. Good. And I think we can probably increase those odds as we change the message. And we'll talk a little bit more about the messaging strategy associated with it in a couple of weeks, but we're going to discuss a little bit of that today. Andy, are you finding about the same numbers?
Yeah, I'll send out 100 invites. I may get two or three inquiries out of that.
Perfect.
About 3% maybe.
So I'm assuming based on what you're doing that it's relatively a candid conversation, message sent out to them, correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't get all that.
I just said based on the messages that you're sending, they're just relatively standardized in nature, right? Nothing super unique. It's just more of a, hey, I'd love to connect with you, correct?
No, I've developed kind of a targeted message.
Great.
An example, I started a campaign probably a week and a half ago for the crowd pitch event. So it was very targeted as an invitation to come to the event. And I follow it up with a like a reminder. So the people that end up connecting with me, I send them like a follow-up message with a little bit more information, just as a reminder, like, hey, if you register by the 20th, you get entered into a the chance to win $100 gift card.
Sure. Yeah.
So I send in I send the initial message, which is very targeted. I can provide a sample.
Yeah, we'll chat more about that for sure.
And then obviously the follow-up message. When people hit that, when they want to connect with me, I send them a follow-up message.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll talk about the messaging here in a couple of weeks. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And the reason I asked that question is I simply wanted to bring to light that it can be done. There are definite ways of leveraging technology to get in front of more people much more quickly. And, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes setting it up and then running it on autopilot every day, that's one aspect of it. And there's some other things that will tie in with that as well. So social selling is definitely an incredible way of building authentic relationships with people that you may not have been able to reach or get in touch with in any other way. It's interesting to me. If you look at the shifting dynamic of business professionals and the time that they spend networking, I'm venturing to guess, just based on what I'm seeing inside of my circles of influence, people are spending less time getting out in the community now because they have so much more work and busyness in their schedule than they ever have before. I'm seeing less attendance to networking events. I'm seeing less attendance to chamber events. And it might just be kind of the world that I live in, but social media, especially LinkedIn, gives you the opportunity then to create those connections prior to and or in the process of meeting with them in person. And that's what we'll discuss in more depth. I want to go over really quick the sales models in today's world. So if you look at the old sales model, you have cold contacting, you have sales demos, and you have qualified leads. It's very, if you will, push-based or traditional-based selling, meaning you're trying to get in front of as many people as you can in a cold market type scenario without really building value in those connections that you have. And interestingly enough, this new sales model is really shifting the paradigm where you can do online e-commerce transactions, where you can do online networking and build legitimate, authentic relationships with people as a result. Now, I always recommend the quickest way to do this is begin the conversations, but then set up a meeting to meet in person so it strengthens that relationship collectively. Set up a Zoom meeting like we're doing right now, or set up a meeting over coffee, or set up a lunch or a dinner or a breakfast meeting. Build the relationship, but the social selling part of it is leveraging social networks, providing education, not sales demos, but providing education. It's more of a what's in it for them strategy, and then engaging them to be a part of your process in a way that really drives long-term value for them as a customer. And I'm going to talk about the story brand approach, or the story brand concept, that I think is absolutely brilliant. But it really talks in depth about, if you're going to do social selling, if you're going to leverage LinkedIn, it's about becoming a person of interest, leveraging information that you know to attract people to you versus always reaching out to them collectively. And what Andy and Luis talked about today is using a push marketing approach. But what I want to build in over the course of the next 8 weeks is, how do you leverage content on LinkedIn specifically so that people actually want to learn more about what you're doing instead of always having to reach out to them directly? Okay, so how are we going to do this? First and foremost, the purpose of this week's presentation, and I know we're pushing for time already. I want to be cognizant of time, so we've got about 25, 30 minutes here. The purpose of this is to help you, first and foremost, week one is to help you set up your profile to attract more people, generate more conversations, and produce more sales for your franchise. This will be done as you understand your story in a way that connects with your potential clients. We'll do this by, first and foremost, determining your ideal customer, setting up your profile, composing your bios so that they connect both authentically plus work based on Google's algorithm. We're going to do that by identifying the story associated with your current job description or ownership description. We're going to do that by identifying elements of how you strengthen previous job description. And we're going away from bulleted items. We're going into presentation mode where we're telling a story of what you did. Okay? We're going to talk a little bit about how to get qualified reviews and recommendations. It's an element of social proof. And then we're going to talk in more depth, and this will probably be week 2/week 3, but we're going to talk about getting more endorsements for you. And I mean, think about this in terms of Google reviews. The more reviews and recommendations, the more endorsements that you capture, that will just lead you down this pipeline of gaining more social proof where people want to learn more about you, see what you're doing, and so on and so forth. I mean, I've constantly leveraged LinkedIn for selling. We close anywhere from 2 to 3 new deals per week, myself and my sales team, by leveraging LinkedIn, by spending maybe 15 to 20 minutes a week on LinkedIn conversations, striking up conversations, getting to the actual presentation, like we were talking about with Luis and Andy. So let's talk really quickly. I want to share with you the story brand process. I think there's a question here. Let me pull it up. After initial connection, do you think, so Luis asked the question, after the initial connection, do you think sharing directing to a webinar is effective? The answer is, yeah, sure. It can be, and it just depends on what the webinar content looks like. If you're doing it in terms of a webinar where it's education-based and you have a sales presentation that's converting, and Mark, do you guys have something from Lendio Corporate that walks through the process of receiving funding, like an animated video of some sort?
We've got a couple of short videos, but I don't know if it goes into the details of how funding happens. We had a couple of new spots recently made that talks about how we can help them, but it doesn't go too deep into details.
Okay. So depending, Luis, on the actual webinar presentation, yes, that can be a point of leverage. Now, I believe that understanding the story that you're trying to tell your customers is just as critical and important, because then you can basically gain a better understanding of how to lead them through the process. Now, so let me walk you through this story brand process. So first and foremost, as we know, there is a character in the story. Now, the character in terms of Lendio or in terms of your franchise, and I'd love to dialogue through this, but in my mind, it's the person looking for non-traditional funding. The business owner that's looking for non-traditional funding. Is that a fair assessment of the character? Or
Yes.
is there a different assessment of the character, the person, the target demographic?
I think it's fair.
Okay.
I don't know if they know. I don't know if they know that they're looking for non-traditional.
Correct. You're exactly right. They may. So that's a fair assessment, RJ. I think maybe rephrasing that, saying the potential character or the character in this target demo is a business owner that's in a bind. Is that fair enough? Someone that may or may not know that they're looking for the type of funding that Lendio offers, but they still are kind of in a bind. And I guess that goes into the second thing, which is the problem. So this character, the target demo, has some sort of a problem. So in your experience, working with people all over the country, what have you found to be maybe 1 or 2 problems that you've been able to identify? And we can all talk, right? Have some dialogue here. What's that main problem that you found that has given you the opportunity to help a company? What's that problem look like?
Cash flow.
Cash flow, okay?
And I would say access to capital. Almost everybody that I've talked to, I wouldn't say every single one, but most would always at some point complain or make the suggestion that they've had trouble getting funding at a bank.
Okay. Thanks, Luis. Any other thoughts? Any other problems that you've run into? Anyone else that's on here with us?
Well, I mean, another problem, I don't know how common it is, but we've all probably run into it. They need some piece of equipment to really do their job or run their business better or more effectively or more efficiently. So equipment is sometimes a need, a problem.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so somebody needs equipment. Somebody has a cash flow problem, are two of the main problems that they run into, correct? Anything else? Any other problems that you've seen in dealing with the Lendio offering to this character, to this target demographic? That's okay if there's not. I'm just want to make sure we're getting it all on the table. All right. You're welcome to type it in the chat room, the chat window if you want. So let's go right to the next portion, which is meets a guide. Now, here it's very interesting to me. I have noticed as we build out this story brand process with a lot of companies and franchise owners, is that many times the franchise owner or the company itself tries to act as the hero in the situation and not as the guide. They try to act as the hero in the situation and not as the guide. So what's the difference? What do you guys think? What's the difference between, you recognize from Lendio's perspective that they have a problem, but what's the difference in you acting as the hero or acting as the guide? How is that different? What's the difference between those 2 points? Or two different roles, I guess. What do you think?
Brian, I think the guide is as a sounding board, provides listens and provides maybe some input, but ultimately he's going to help the business owner in this case arrive to the solution on their own versus us just coming out of the gate and saying, oh, well, here's this, and I think this is the best thing for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the hero is the hero, right? He's the one that brings in the solution to the problem. The guide is the person that guides them to the decision so that they don't have buyer's remorse or they don't have lender's remorse in your terminology, I guess that's a fair term. So, and why? Why would we use a guide? Why would we position each one of you as a guide versus the hero? I mean, maybe from an egotistical perspective, we think, well, we want to be that hero. We want to save them. We want to save this business owner. But what happens? I mean, literally, what happens if you just come in and force a solution on them that doesn't create that value for them? I mean, it will create value, of course, but it doesn't, in the beginning, it doesn't feel like there's value created. What happens is you're going to get people that, especially on LinkedIn, that you're trying to connect with, that you're trying to answer their solution in a message. And what happens in so many ways is that they're turned off by that. They don't want you to tell them what to do. I mean, it goes back to the axiom of people don't want to be sold, but they want to buy. So acting as a guide gives you the opportunity to provide value and strengthen that relationship. And from that guide's perspective, and especially when it comes to messaging with your target demographic, from that guide's perspective, then we have the opportunity to really help them based on how they want to be or they need to be helped versus how we want to think that they need to be helped. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, have you seen yourself, and this is a rhetorical question and kind of an internal question, but have you seen yourself playing that guide, or have you seen yourself playing more of the hero? And how will it change the process? It'll change everything. As I've worked with companies, as we've implemented this whole process, it changes everything. Think about this in terms of movies. When you look at movies all across the board, one of my kids' favorites and one of my favorites is the Hunger Games, right? You have Katniss Everdeen, who is the character. She has a problem, an external, an internal, and a philosophical problem with what's going on with these Hunger Games. And instead of, hey, Mitch, this guy that just comes to help find the solution, if he came in as the hero and said, I'm going to solve your problems, then the movie would have been over and no one would have been attracted to the actual movie. But instead, he plays a guide. He leads them through this leads, Katniss in this perspective through this decision-making process, which the next step obviously meets a guide, and the guide then gives them the plan. It doesn't solve the problem, but gives them the plan, creates the call to action, and that call to action then ends either in success or helps them avoid failure. So I want you to think, as we formulate the messaging and as we begin building your profile, I want you to think about these things. When you're writing your profile, the bio section of your profile, are you trying to sell yourself in terms of the hero, or are you trying to articulate a message that builds value as the guide? Okay? And I want you to think about these things, because this is going to it's going to be a big indicator as to whether or not they're attracted to you, or if they're going to go do business with someone else. Now, Luis and Andy were talking about sending out 700 or 500 messages. I wonder if we change the dynamics of the message to position themselves as a guide versus a hero, if there will be more response from the message that's actually being sent. And I propose, or that I would almost guarantee, because of what we've seen happen with this, I would guarantee that if we could position it differently, and Mark, we'll work with you, Mark Cottle, work hand in hand with you to come up with some different ways of positioning plans that you can offer to your connections on LinkedIn, giving them specific direction and calls to action that you'll help them gain more success, and you'll start to see leads and sales and lending happening through the process of leveraging LinkedIn. So let me take a step back. Does this make sense? And how can you see it be applied to your business currently?
I like it very much. This is something that I need to get better at. And I guess I'm really just anxious to see how we do that in LinkedIn, because when I'm on LinkedIn, you just get swarmed with people's postings, and maybe I'm not doing it right, that I can truly interact with people.
Yeah, LinkedIn has become quite a bit of a spam fest, right? and changing the dynamic, shifting the dynamic a little bit could have that much bigger of an approach. What other thoughts do you have? How else do you think we can, or does this make sense? And how else do you think we can implement this into the overall process of selling via social media?
I'd have to say yes, it makes sense. And it sounds like it can definitely be successful, especially when, time is of the essence. You don't want to spend all day, on LinkedIn when you can do it in like 15 minutes to half an hour at the most for a week.
Yep.
But like RJ said, I'm kind of in the same boat as him, where I've taken a look at it. I haven't really sent too much. I've done a few searches here and there, but for the most part, it's knowing exactly what to say to attract everyone.
Yeah. And quite honestly, that's going to be the value, my friends, of this whole 8 weeks, is we're going to walk you through how to do this most effectively to generate more success. And I'm sure, Mark Cottle, you and I will probably have some conversations between week presentations to best help formulate this from a corporate perspective, so that it gives you the leverage to do it on a tactical level with each of your specific franchise locations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, let's dive in. Thank you for your feedback and insights. I'm a big proponent of this process. As a matter of fact, I actually created, and I sent it to you, Mark, in a Google Drive. You're welcome to add all of the members that are participating in that Google Drive. There's about a 3-page document that has tons of depth and perspective on this story brand process. It's a Word document that's in there. So you're welcome, Mark, to add those people in that Google Drive as well if they want to be attached to that or added to that, so they can gain a better understanding of what the story process looks like long term. Okay, now let's go to the basics. I know we kind of went through the theory, but number one is we need to determine who your ideal customer is. That can be, who are you trying to get in front of? Maybe it's an age-based decision, a gender-based decision, a professional-based decision, a profession. Where do they work? What do they do? Profession is probably the one that's most attractive to Lendio as a corporation and you as franchise owners, because you're trying to get in front of a certain person or a certain type of individual or a certain demographic of individual, right? So think about those as you're thinking about the process. Second thing I want you to think about is brand awareness when it comes to you as an individual is dependent on you. Now, what I mean by that is Lendio is a solid brand, but people will associate and create more connection to you when it's a brand that you've created around your ecosphere, if you will, versus the company's ecosphere. Meaning, brand yourself for sure, as an owner of a franchise location of Lendio, but in the context of your bio, in the context of your job description, that's where you're going to brand yourself about who you are. And I'll give you some guidelines about that. Now, first and foremost, your profile image. Mark, I'm hoping you have your profile image up now, right? Mark Grant?
Yeah, 3 days ago.
Hey, fantastic. You probably knew I was going to pick on you, right? So, yeah, so make sure that your profile image is professional, especially in LinkedIn. Facebook, you can do more cash, but LinkedIn, you want to have a professional headshot. Find a photographer. There's plenty of freelance photographers in your area that are probably more really excited and want to do business with you, that would probably take headshots from anywhere from $35 to $100 to get a picture on LinkedIn so that it's attractive, people want to engage with it, so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, and if you don't have that funding, just take have a spouse, significant other, a child of yours, take a picture of you in a suit, head basically shoulders up, and just use that, right? Find something that works there. Then set your profile image. Use that same social, that profile, that headshot across those social media platforms that you want to leverage from a connection and a selling perspective. Okay. Now I say same across all social platforms. Mine are a little bit different. I have more of a professional headshot for LinkedIn versus my other profiles. So if you don't have an image across all your social profiles, then use the same social media profile. Now, headlines we'll talk more about. The title, who you are, the problem you and your company solves. And I would even change this a little bit because I don't know if I like that phraseology as much, but not the problem that you solve, but the plan that you help people engage with based on this new story brand process. And make sure your profile is filled out 100%. So let's dive in first and foremost. So and this is a buddy of mine, I just want to kind of bring a couple different items. And we shared some of this with you before, but nice profile picture. He's got a nice little cover on his LinkedIn profile. So make sure that you have that, right? Make sure you have that nice profile picture with a cover associated with it. And if it's just you can go to, for instance, you can go to Pixabay, Pixabay, and find some free stock footage if you want to find something that kind of meets your target demo. Okay? But make sure here that you have who you are, right? CEO, author, and speaker. And this isn't where you're going to put your company. This is where you're just going to basically put who you are and what you represent as a whole. That makes sense. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. So now when it comes to the summary, I want you to think about the 3 E's of social media and how you can build that summary around the 3 E's. So first is educate them on who you are, entertain them, give them something that piques their interest versus any other profile, and something that might create some engagement. You might even have a call to action built into your actual, the profile section. I'll show you what that looks like. But you want some summary paragraphs about you, 2 to 3 paragraphs. And make sure that those paragraphs are keyword rich. What does that mean? Well, because you're in the lending world, make sure that inside of those paragraphs, it has some keywords associated with that. Okay? Some tag words that you find you use more often than not, use them. Now, why? Well, because quite frankly, the reason you want to use them is because Google has these little bots that search search the internet, and if they're finding content that's relevant to the searches that they're doing based on keywords, then they'll give you a little bit higher rankings. When someone searches your name, they'll potentially give you higher rankings than what they would normally do. Now, what's interesting to me, and I found this because of all of these things that I've implemented, there's actually a professional cricket player by the name of Ryan Harris. There's a professional football player, former football player, and a professional, soccer player, a rugby player, I think. And my LinkedIn profile, when I've asked people to do this, my LinkedIn profile or my social media profiles have actually outperformed from a search engine optimization perspective, have outperformed these professional athletes because of how I've optimized my profile. So think about that. 2 to 3 paragraphs, and make sure that these paragraphs, they're not long, super long paragraphs. The attention span of human beings in today's environment is like 7 seconds. The attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So you have to try to capture their attention as quickly as you possibly can. There's another question. All right, can you give us some examples of keywords? Sure. So one thing you can do is if you go to Google AdWords and you type in lending, inside of Google AdWords, sometimes it'll give you some comparable synonyms that people are searching for. So lending, so in your case, lending might be one of those words, or financing might be another word. You know, if you looked at synonyms in the business world, and Mark Cottle, maybe you can throw in some other ideas of what you guys have discussed with, and even give some more ideas, send out a message, if not, or something of different words that the tech department of Lendio has used to search engine optimize the efforts that you're putting in. Mark, are you have you guys done that at all? Have you optimized it or looked at different keywords?
Yeah, I've got a list of them that's a mile long. There's like 4 or 5 dozen keywords that we've used for SEO, but I'd have to go find the list.
Perfect. Why don't you, Mark, why don't you upload that into that Google folder, that Google Drive folder, so that they have access to those?
So that everybody can see, I just created a new folder in our franchisee library that everybody has access to.
Perfect.
Marketing, there's a new folder named LinkedIn, and the file that Ryan shared with me, I just put in there a few minutes ago.
Perfect. Awesome.
I'll put the keywords there too.
Perfect. So Mark, if I add any additional slides or anything, I'll make sure, or documents, I'll let you know that you can just copy and paste those into there.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. So Andy, I hope that's helpful. So he'll have a word list, if you will, that you can leverage for that. And again, I haven't done the Google searches to find out what keywords you guys have been leveraging for SEO, but I know corporate's been doing that for you and leveraging that. So in job description, same thing. Make sure that it's keyword rich, right? Make sure it's keyword rich. 2 to 3 paragraphs in the job description sections of now, and this not only includes your current position, but go back to previous descriptions and make sure that there's, you can put some bullet points or paragraphs, however you want to do it. I would suggest that you use paragraphs, but make sure they're keyword rich, again, from an optimization perspective. Tell a story. Go back to this idea of the story brand and tell a story that makes a connection with people, right? And then also skills and endorsements. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few presentations. So make your summary about you, your stories, and your purpose. Okay? Make it about you. Make it an authentic connection. Make it a really authentic connection about you, your stories, and your purpose. Now, how can we do that? I'm interested. Let's open up the dialogue here for a few minutes. So I know we have some people that haven't chimed in. Jason, Derek, Carrie, tell me, Mark, tell me some of your thoughts around this. Like, how can you best share that from a storytell perspective? How can you make it real to you in your bio section?
Good question. I'd rather hear from others. I think Carrie has a great story. You know, what she uses in her world about where she came from, what drives her, and why she does event planning, and how she got going by just planning an event that helped people. Helped show people how she plans events. You know, that's kind of how she kicked off her own business.
Great.
Things like that, I think are great stories. Sometimes I like to talk to people about when I was in grad school, we did projects with a software program where we'd go around and measure the economic impact of local community festivals or whatever projects the Chamber of Commerce or the city council was engaged in.
Uh-huh.
So we measure the tax, the local economic impact of certain things, and we're doing that again today, right? So by facilitating small business loans, we're helping our franchisees are helping small businesses impact their local economy by X amount. So sometimes I'll intro it that way by just telling that kind of a story.
That's great. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like to learn from others that are more experienced in this. But for me, I guess I need to leverage more of my background because I do have experience in the lending side of it, and then also with working with businesses for the last 5 years or so on there, and kind of build a story around my past experience and why I got into this.
Yeah.
So I just don't like pointing fingers at myself. So
and that's so important, right? Because you can come across from an egotistical perspective. We all have the opportunity to celebrate who we are, and I guess the difference is be confident in what you're putting inside of your profile, but don't be cocky, right? Because confidence breeds respect and it breeds engagement, but cockiness repels, right? So just think about that as you're trying to put and formulate this together in that story, and it's a work in progress. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that as we're developing out the story for each one of you. Tell us about the company, right? The story is key and critical, and go through this process. What are those things specifically that you can guide your target demographic about inside of your profile? What does that guide look like, and how can you play that guide role versus the hero role? Going back again to the confidence versus the cockiness, right? As you play a guide role, share it confidently. The hero role sometimes can take an element or an aura of being conceited. So think about that, and we can formulate a little more on that. So I want to share with you a couple different quotes from a storytelling perspective that are super powerful. First and foremost, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of the entire generation that is to come. So your story and how you lay this out, and here's what I would say: I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the story, but don't overthink it too much. Keep it simple so that people can understand it. As a matter of fact, I was reading a book the other day. It was talking about Steve Jobs and how when Steve Jobs launched his very first computer, before he went to Pixar, when he launched his very first computer, the marketing campaign was 9 pages long. It had all the specs, the scope, so on and so forth. But then he left and went to Pixar, and when he came back to Apple, this whole long, drawn-out storytell process was formulated in 2 words that changed the whole dynamic of Apple in and of itself. And the 2 words are think differently. Formulated the whole story around that, right? So maybe in the beginning of your profile, you start with a compelling 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 word sentence that captures that attention and then builds a little bit more of the story in the next 1.5 to 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. Now, paragraphs meaning 1 or 2 sentences, not a novel, right? Something that formulates that story and builds that value. Storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. As a matter of fact, the incredible brand awareness and bottom line profit achievable through social media marketing requires hustle, heart, sincerity, constant engagement, long-term commitment, and most of all, artful and strategic storytelling. From one of my mentors, Gary Vaynerchuk, the guy is a brilliant when it comes to content distribution and social media execution. And he does an artful job and a strategic job of storytelling. So let me give you an example. So here's a profile of Stuart, my friend Stuart. He says, Stuart Draper is the co-author of Digital Marketing Essentials, the best-selling text in higher education of its kind. So again, he is positioning himself as the authority. He kind of walks through successfully bootstrapped Get Found First. It was acquired in 2015 and now is working with Stu Kent, a digital courseware company that provides the world's #1 digital marketing simulation, the world's first social media marketing simulation, a variety of text, videos, and projects. So he, even though this might come off more of like the hero, I still like it because the story associated with it is like I'm establishing myself as an authority figure and kind of presents him as an authority figure that can be a guide for business solutions. So the next paragraph, Stuart works and takes him all over the globe. He's been to Romania, Mexico, China, Puerto Rico, Germany, India to speak at audiences. So it's building that level of authority through storytell that now has established him as the authority figure. And this is the bio section. And then what I would do in the job description section is that's where you begin to formulate even more effectively you as the guide. So build yourself as an authority, a guide-based authority, and then in the back end of that, in the job section, that's where you can position yourself as that guide. Now, I know we're pushing up right against 2 o'clock right now, and I know we've only allocated an hour specifically for this. So I want to stop here, and I'm gonna continue this next week, finish out this whole process, more about this, and then dive into week number 2. But are there any specific questions? Because I have some assignments, but are there any specific questions as to the content that we've shared today? Are you overwhelmed? Does it feel like there's way too much information that's been thrown at you so far?
Well, a lot of this information makes sense. So I can see how not everyone would have a question. I guess my only concern is when you're talking about this is making it not a real paragraph or two and kind of trimming it down. That's kind of one of my weaknesses, which is why I'm listening. So I'm hoping you can help with that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the assignment. The assignment this week is I want you to go and put together, before next week, I want each of you to go and put together your bio. And before you add it to LinkedIn, I want to assess it. Okay. So let me give you my email address. It's ryan@strategicsocialpartners.com. ryan@strategicsocialpartners.com. And I want to hear from each one of you this week with your bio, and then I can help give you feedback and assess the bio before we actually add that to your LinkedIn profile. And number 2 is if you don't have a profile picture yet, let's get one up. I know we can't all look as good as Luis right here, but that's a really nice profile picture. I think he does a really good job. His profile's pretty solid. And even some of the language that he associates right here is solid in his storytell play. So consider that. Consider that. Look over Luis's. If you're not connected to Luis, jump in and get connected to him. Look at my profile, Ryan Imob Harris on LinkedIn. And I know I need to do some work on my profile now that we're talking through this. I haven't done work on it in a little bit. So I'm going to go dive into my own and restructure some of it. But will you guys do that for me? Will you, and Mark, if you wouldn't mind in your next Wednesday meeting, just following up with each of the franchise owners or send out an email throughout this process this week and just have this be top of mind, because I'd really like to get this up before we get into the second week of training. So will you guys do that for me?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We'll send out a couple of reminders, and then we'll pick, as soon as we nail down what time next week will be the next call, then we'll make sure that everybody's on board for that, in addition to our Wednesday conversation we're going to have anyways. But we'll keep reminders going out to get the bios up so that we can all keep working on this.
Hey, Ryan?
Yeah.
Quick question. This is technical, but I noticed Luis is writing in first person on his bio here. The example you were giving was third person. Is that just a preference thing, or do you have any recommendation on how it should be drafted?
I prefer, quite honestly, I highly prefer first person.
Okay.
Just because it makes more of an authentic connection, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just real quick, before I wrote my bio, I did do a little bit of research, and I did run into that school of thought of doing it in first or third, and from what Ryan's saying, you did find that I think most people out there will agree that first person is it's just more, it's more personal, and because you're introducing yourself, so it's just easier, I think, to read, and it just makes it more personable. So I ended up going with the first person, and it just felt more natural to me to do it that way as well. And so I think it works. So
yeah, great. Well, listen, guys, thank you for your time today. We'll be jumping back on next week. I'm excited. I'm excited for this training process, the program, and what it'll actually end up being for you all. And again, the 8-week goal is that we're generating more leads and sales from LinkedIn than you ever have before. So for some of you, that might be easy because you may not have done it yet. But overall, we're going to get moving and shaking on LinkedIn so you can leverage social media to create more successful connections and leverage those connections to generate more revenue for you and for your business. Fair enough?
Yes.
Oh, one last side note. Mark, we're moving these to Thursdays, correct?
We hadn't pinned that down yet, to my knowledge, but that sounds great to me.
Yeah, so we'll be doing these Thursdays the same time at 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So I'll be changing the recurring information that's coming out to you via Zoom. But just plan on these on Thursdays at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. And if you can't make them, we'd love to have you live because obviously it's a lot more interactive from a live perspective. But if you can't make it live, then we'll have the recording for you. So, okay, thanks everybody for your time today. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to meeting next week.
Thank you, Ryan.
You got it.
Thank you.
thanks, Ryan.
Have a good day, guys.